Well, here we all are again. A few days before Christmas 2025. All of the cliches about the speed at which time whizzes through life are at the forefront of my mind. This year's a very reflective time, I think, for a lot of us. I'm a naturally retrospective soul anyway. And I know, in general, the kind of people who've been interested in what I've waffled on about over the years seem to feel much the same. I think it's important to give thanks for everything that maintains its trajectory and sometimes even comes along afresh to make sense and hold your hand through this earthly affair. My relationship with my daughter continues to thrive and shine, which I'm eternally grateful for. The ways in which life has challenged me over the last 6 years, I'm grateful for some of it. The outcome of how solid it makes your armour against the cliches and rhetoric and agendas of life. That is invaluable. It really is. We make the mistake when we're younger, well, I certainly did, of thinking that I was already pretty much infallible when it came to my BS detector. But tends to be a tool with which we look outwards for a vast percentage of our life. And then you get to a point where you think, no, I need to be viewed with the same scrutiny that I offer the rest of the world, the universe, other people, etc. And it offers the metaphorical, biblical 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness, doesn't it? I know that the more familiar I become with what and who I truly am, the less I want to ever step back into a world of what I now consider, to a good 80% of instances, just the illusions of kinship. You know, and that's a damning indictment on my past and what and who I've been, as well as some of the people around me. But introspection and life offering me such a terminus in 2019 of a relationship ending, getting close to somebody, them taking their own life, was just a point where it wasn't a decision anymore. I just thought, right, enough. Or I felt it. Bestowing the kind of gift of perception onto a situation like that is ridiculous. Life just goes right, brakes on. And all of a sudden you realise, shit, this vehicle that I thought that I'd been piloting for the last 40 or 50 years, there is actually an override. And it's like a coping mechanism that exists beyond your conscious mind, I find. And my whole being in the months that followed the suicide just said, right, slow down, and stop. And then in early 2020, the world went to hell in a handbasket with the COVID-19 pandemic. And while the rest of the world was struggling, and don't get me wrong, I don't treat this with any lack of respect for those who are going through personal hell and being locked in with abusive partners for 2 years. But it was absolutely no alteration to my life, except for a rather irrational fear of the disease that was in the air. Still remains in the air, but no one gives it a second thought now. But it teaches you. It teaches you self-reliance. When I look back to when I consider myself to be at my most broken in the year of 20 excuse me, the year of 2020, I still managed to secure the flat that I'm now living in and have been for 4.5 years. I know there are people who see this who've been there since the beginning and will go, my God, you've been there for 4.5 years. Oh shit, I thought you moved there last year. The passage of time in our lives it's scary at times. For those of us without an afterlife based faith as well, Jesus. There's irony. Good old Jesus. Using the Lord's name in vain whilst claiming we're alone in a empty, godless universe. Still, you got to laugh, haven't you? As Holly said in Red Dwarf after that very statement. I can't imagine the life that I used to lead now, with people buzzing around me constantly, them having to tolerate me. I honestly can't imagine that life now. It seems that the life we're led to believe we need, and what our soul tells us so deeply at the early point in our life, we get to a bit later on, and everybody who I know who's a bit of a thinker, you know, that's not to elevate people who think in that way above others, they're just different, all tend to be very content with their single life, their cat, their dog, their grandchildren, whatever it may be, you know, maybe there that's in their life that gives them focus and purpose. But I've spent 6 years and 4 months without friends in my life. Just being self-reliant. And I'm far from the most healthy anybody on this planet has ever been in the sense of mental health, but that aspect of life, chasing that which didn't really serve me, and I certainly didn't serve other people with my atrocious behaviour, thinking specifically at my 20s. Like a lot of the things we chase, once the chase is over, you look back and think, what was I doing that for in the first place? I find I get very little pleasure. I still go through the motions, but you get to a point in life where you really feel like you've seen it all with regards to the sort of lighter side of life, the entertainment and the joy. I've seen too much to pretend that I think I could ever see anything that would wow my heart anymore. A new Battlefield game came out in October, and yeah, I've played it, but it just doesn't do it for me anymore. It can be enjoyable every so often, but nothing tends to grab me and hold me in place and just say, this is fantastic. I don't know if things that I used to like were shit and I just had more of an ability to glaze situations in joy because I wanted there to be meaning and purpose beyond the norm and the routine and the mundane. But that game sums it up for me. I just don't find the pleasure anymore. I don't find the joy. Enjoyment is still there from time to time periodically, but nothing grabs me, and I think about it in moments where you're not necessarily focused on downtime and joy, you know. But this isn't a negative message I'm trying to put out as my alternative Queen's speech. It's just giving a summation of what the last 6 years, what direction they've led me in. And it always seems pertinent and relevant to share a bit of reflection at Christmas time. I mean, I still make videos every day, more or less. It's a personal diary. It's another thing with getting to your mid-50s and you're very aware of your mortality. You start thinking, God, I want to leave a trail of breadcrumbs for those I could potentially leave behind, you know. I know I've seen situations where a guy knew he was on the way out and he had a series of time-locked emails that he'd written to his daughter in the couple of years where he knew he was dying. And she had an email for the next 30 years of her life awaiting her every day, and they were time-locked. They'd be released at midnight, you know. I mean, how wonderful is that? What kind of a gift is that to leave somebody? You know, that's just... We all have those moments when we've lost somebody where we think, oh, I must tell. And think, oh no, they're not here anymore. And just in that moment, you feel a sense of kind of subdued elation, thinking, oh, I've got to tell. Oh no. And initially, it's a very crushing feeling, but eventually it becomes something which keeps you warm. Knowing that you may not have that person in your life who could relate to it right now, but once upon a time they were there, you know. And looking at the person a lot of us become in our midlife, if we met that really wonderful person who could relate to things and we'd want to share with, if we met them at this point in our life, we'd probably walk straight past them and be glad that they'd gone at the end of your interaction, you know. I think statistically you're meant to fall in love 3 times in your life, and that is exactly what happened to me. 3 times. Emotions and feelings for another human being that are just so hard to fathom on reflection. Absolutely incredible, but I'd walk past that person now. Something gave me massive pause for thought 1 week ago today. It came to my attention that my girlfriend during the mid-late 1990s, her mother passed away during November. And I'm not unaccustomed to hearing people I've had a lot of time for, a lot of love for, no longer here. But the way her passing has affected me was something that took me by surprise, completely and utterly. There's a lot to be easily kind of ascertained from why she was one of the pillars as to why the mid-late 90s was so fantastic for me. She was very closely satelliting a time in my life where for a short time I was truly happy. But it goes beyond that, and I'm not sure it went beyond that back in the day, but she was a true Christian. Never passed judgment on anybody, but lived in her own absolutely batshit crazy, eccentric wonderland. Not always the easiest of people to relate to from time to time. That would have changed with age if I'd met her when I was older. Very well to do, very posh, but a true example of what one would traditionally think a Christian should be, you know. And I've shed more tears thinking about her in the last 7 days than I have anyone else who's no longer here. It's really quite taken me aback as to how much she meant to me. I haven't spoken to the woman since 2001, but it is incredible how powerful the beauty of a life force is, even when they're nothing to do with you anymore. A quarter of a century has passed and somebody still moves you to that extent. And naturally I have regrets associated with it. I know I treated her daughter atrociously. Documented it very openly over the years. I was an emotionally nasty piece of shit in my mid to late 20s. And naturally, I had my empire of dirt and destroyed it all by 2001. And eventually I tried communicating with her daughter, my partner, my ex-partner. And about 10 years ago, she got back in touch with me via Messenger and said, "How you doing? I've decided to give it a go and talk to you because 10 years is too long to have hated anybody." And I thought, wow. You know, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt completely comfortable with what she said, but I'd never heard her say it. I only witnessed her responses in real time to me being a piece of shit, you know. And I hope with her mum's faith that she is right. She was right, and she is in heaven right now. And I hope she is fully aware of the late night text chat that me and her daughter had last Monday evening, reminiscing about things both of us had forgotten about her wonderful mum. But it brought us together and we shared some fond memories that only her and I knew about. And something rather heavy hit me after we spoke, and we departed on very fond and respectful terms, united in joy and grief over the loss of her mum. And I realised there's such a trail of destruction with what a nasty piece of work I was in my 20s. And it's a time that there are moments where I know I was very good value and a good friend, and people were wonderful to me. But such is the trail of destruction in my life. I've got nobody to reminisce with. And last Monday night, united in grief with the daughter of this beautiful woman, we reminisced about a time in my life that exists only in my memory now, and there's no one to share the energies that build up over years of trust and friendship and everything like that. And I haven't reminisced with anybody about how wonderful certain aspects of the early part of that time were. And there I was for the first time in a quarter of a century with somebody going, "Oh my God, do you remember when?" And that meant the world to me. You know, in some cases, these memories are 30, 31 years old, nearly 32 years old, some of them. And to have a first experience of reminiscing since it all came crashing down around my ears was it felt constructed and planned by the woman who we were grieving for. And I'm a strong believer that beyond our five senses, things do operate that guide us in certain directions at times, and that being united in humour and sadness for this recently deceased woman, I could imagine her, knowing her as I did, smiling and going, "Told you so," and being very happy that we'd found peace in that moment. As you get older, so much of what we are, it's not dark, but it's got a certain shade of melancholy, as opposed to any other emotion that could be prevalent at any other point in your life. There's a certain melancholy to the way we view things and the way we feel and the way the crackling of a log fire means more to us now than the excesses of the crazy nights at festivals and everything like that we had in our 20s and 30s. Watching the flames grow and die at the end of the fire's life cycle, you know, it's there is a complexity and a simplicity, a start, a middle and an end, and it's so aware of having viewed the start and the middle that the melancholy of sort of facing the retrospective nature of getting towards the later portion of your life, it makes you see things a certain way, and so many of us respond in self-preservatory ways when forced to deal with the world as it and the demands it makes of us, that we show an eagerness and a joy and a spring in our step that really doesn't exist beyond having coping mechanisms to allow us to fit in better. But in truth, we're tired and melancholy, you know. And that's a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with either of those things. The world's in a shocking state at this point in time. You know, so much so I've had to tailor social media and influence algorithms so I see nothing about politics. I see nothing about the state of the world, because it was affecting my mental health to such disturbing degrees. We're designed to be in small tribes. We're not designed to take on every bit of pain and misery, war, bloodshed, tragedy. We're not designed to take it on from 8 billion other people. We're designed to live in our own communities and deal with them. The rarity of the death within the tribe is always counterbalanced with the relative rarity of the birth. Everything, when one thing leaves, something else arrives. And the way social media especially is geared towards pumping out nothing but fear. All we seem to see at the moment is just tragedy, death and destruction, and it's very unhealthy. And it's a very unrealistic view of the entirety of the world. You know, while one person's in pain, arguably none of us should be able to sit back and relax, but we've corrupted that which we were at our conception, our birth on this planet, which is just small tribes. And that's really where the argument against social media and the way it affects us should begin and end. We're just not designed to take it on, and it's made me very unhappy and very unwell at times. thought crimes are now a thing. I believe in consequences, but I don't believe in censorship. Sure, there are notable exceptions where if anybody in the internet realm is doxing you, sharing your personal information, threatening you, it's not at all an affront to freedom of speech to think, well, you wouldn't walk up to me and say that to me in the street. I'm not giving you the ability to do that. Metaphorically or literally speaking, anybody walking up to you and talking to you like that will get a smack in the mouth. And I feel no guilt about the apparent hypocrisy that I may have shown by deleting people from social media. And I just think, no, you wouldn't talk to me like that in person. Don't you fucking dare try and do it when you've got a keyboard and a few wires of fibre optic cable between us. I met somebody a few years ago in the place I'm living now who had been quite threatening and nasty to me. Not threatening, that's ridiculous. Quite nasty and critical. And they bumped into me, and they didn't have to, but they introduced themselves to me and said, I'm let's say Kevin. And I said, oh right, yeah, I know that name. And he said, yeah, now I've seen you, I just want to say I'm so sorry. I just, take out my shit on people I shouldn't. The internet allows us to be complete and utter monsters. The fact of the matter is, it does need taking into consideration that energy exists in us, that want for sharing, how the bitterness we feel about life and the way we've been treated. We want other people to feel it, but that's where being expressive in forms like art come in. Show your anger in a piece of music, write a bit of poetry, share it with the world. Not many people are going to buy it, but don't take it out on the individuals who are equally as screwed up as you are. These are all lessons that I need to learn as well. Don't ever think that I'm some kind of pontificating holier than thou twat. Well, I am, but I have got the self-awareness to know that I'm as much a student to the kind of shit that I come out with as I feel anybody else should be. This is just my experience. And I know there are a number amongst the small amount of people who will see this who see things very similarly to me. And it's nice to be able to say, especially at a time of year like this where you really are reminded, if you are on your own, that in essence, yeah, it's bullshit to say you're not on your own. But in the spiritual and experience-based realm, you're far from alone. You're part of an energy. We're part of an energy that binds us all. Whatever you're doing in the next few days, be happy. Be thoughtful. Share a bit of love. Even if it's just opening the windows and throwing a bit of bread out for the birds, I think we all just need to be a bit more introspective and a bit nicer. And in some cases, nicer to ourselves as well as other people. God bless. Lots of love.